It's yet another year, and the same old story for Manchester United, as they will be looking for a different manager once again. We can't say that's the least surprising seeing how the past decade or so has been. From their founding in 1878 all the way up to 2013, United had just 21 managers across 135 years. Yes, 135 years, 21 managers. And then Sir Alex Ferguson retired. Since then, in just 13 years, United have already gone through 11 different managers, caretakers and interim bosses included. That is almost half of their entire managerial history squeezed into barely over a decade. It's been one failure to another for every manager that comes through the door. For almost 3 decades, with just one man in charge, United were the original traditional club. Stability was basically part of their DNA. Ferguson ran the club from November 6, 1986 to May 19, 2013. Over 26 years. In that time, he managed 1,500 games, winning 895 of them. That's a win percentage of just under 60% across all competitions. In the Premier League alone, he had a 65% win rate, which showed sustained dominance, season after season, generation after generation. He won 38 trophies in total, including 13 Premier League titles, and various iconic runs like the treble season in 1999 and one last title in 2013, just to remind everyone who he was. In Europe, Ferguson delivered 2 Champions League titles, and added to that a Cup Winners' Cup, a UEFA Super Cup, an Intercontinental Cup, and a FIFA Club World Cup. He won everywhere, against everyone. He is United's longest-serving manager ever, and retired as a champion. And ever since he left, United have been trying and maybe unsuccessfully figuring out how to replace who is the entire foundation of the club. The impossible job of replacing him first fell to David Moyes. And while many United fans hoped for the best, it went about as well as you'd expect. Moyes officially started on July 1, 2013, and was gone in less than a year. He did not even last a full season. He got just around a 53% win rate across all competitions. 50% win rate in the league, which was mid, considering he managed just 34 games in the league. He did win one trophy, the 2013 Community Shield, beating Wigan 2-0, but that ended up being the high point. Against the actual big boys, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Chelsea, United were miles off it. They got just 5 points from 8 games, with 1 win, 2 draws, and 5 losses, scoring 7 and conceding 15. Not great for the biggest club in the country. Tactically, Moyes became that guy who just told his players to whip crosses into the box and hope for the best. The most infamous example was the 2-2 draw with Fulham, where United attempted 81 crosses, 81. That's still the most in a Premier League match since records began in 2003-04. And if you were hoping he'd at least be braver away from home against top teams, nope, he never won away at the top 4 with Everton. And that same pattern followed him to United, highlighted by that brutal 4-1 loss to City. Transfers didn't help either. United chased names like Gareth Bale and Cesc Fabregas, missed out completely, and then panic-bought Marouane Fellaini for over £27 million on deadline day. Former players and fans weren't impressed. Rio Ferdinand called the tactics embarrassing, and Wayne Rooney admitted there was no clear vision. United finished 7th, their worst league position since the Premier League started in 1992, and after a 2-0 loss to his former side Everton, Moyes was sacked. Ryan Giggs stepped in as interim manager to complete the season and managed just 4 games. In the summer, United set their sights on a new manager, and they got one. Louis van Gaal. The Dutchman arrived in July 2014, and statistically, he was steadier. Across 103 games in all competitions, he managed an over 52% win rate and 51% in the Premier League. It wasn't much difference, but he managed more than twice as many games as Moyes. Van Gaal's big moment was the 2016 FA Cup, beating Crystal Palace 2-1 in extra time, and that was it. 1 trophy. Against the Big Six, United had a better run with 10 wins, 6 draws, and 4 losses in 20 games. League-wise, they finished 4th in 2014-15 with 70 points, then slipped to 5th in 2015-16 with 66. The problem with Van Gaal was the football. His play looked slow with a lot of sideways passing and absolutely draining matches. United drew 19 league games under him, averaged just 1.46 goals per match, and legends like Paul Scholes openly complained about how boring it was. Transfers were expensive but underwhelming. Angel Di Maria arrived for almost £60 million, scored 4 goals in 32 games, and then left. Memphis Depay cost £25 million, scored 7 in 45 games, and never really clicked. Despite winning the FA Cup in 2016, Van Gaal was sacked 2 days later. The board felt the club wasn't progressing, especially with Champions League football slipping away, so it was another manager down, and this was just 3 years after Ferguson left. The club knew they needed to do something fast. That opened the door for Jose Mourinho, who came in May 2016. Finally, it was a big-name manager. Results-wise, Jose was the most successful post-Fergie manager. He managed 144 games in all competitions and had a just over 58% win rate. In the league, he had the same 58% win rate. Mourinho also delivered titles, the 2016 Community Shield, the 2017 League Cup, and the 2017 Europa League. Against the Big Six, United went 8 wins, 7 draws, and 10 losses. It was a roller coaster in the Premier League, though. In 2016-17, United finished 6th with 69 points, but sneaked into the Champions League by winning the Europa League. In 2017-18, they finished 2nd with 81 points, which Mourinho later claimed was his greatest achievement. And honestly, he might have had a point. But by 2018-19, it all collapsed. United won just 7 of their first 17 league games, and Mourinho was gone with the team sitting 19 points off the top. His style was classic Mourinho, defensive, pragmatic, and often ugly. Possession stats often fell below 38% in big games. He also fell out with key players, especially Paul Pogba, who found himself benched, and Anthony Martial. Recall that Pogba returned for a record £89 million. Other big signings included Romelu Lukaku, who cost £75 million. He scored 42 goals in 96 appearances. The club pulled the plug again. After Jose left around mid-season in 2018, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in next as caretaker, and honestly at this point, not everyone was optimistic. But maybe surprisingly, Ole was at the wheel and it was steady. They were winning games, the vibes were immaculate, and United were smiling again, counter-attacking teams into the ground. They finished just 5 points off the Champions League spots, and considering how the season started, it was enough for the club to hand him the job permanently in March 2019. The big issue with the Ole era was no trophies. He got close once, reaching the Europa League final in 2021, only for United to lose that absurd 11-10 penalty shootout to Villarreal after a 1-1 draw. Peak United pain coupled with the fact that they lost a lot of semi-finals as well, from the League Cup to the FA Cup, and even in Europa League semi-final to Sevilla, against the so-called Big Six. Ole's United were actually competitive but shared the records, winning 9 and losing 9. But they had some impressive victories like beating City on 3 separate occasions. League finishes were still a roller coaster like previous managers. 6th in 2018-19 with 66 points, 3rd in 2019-20 with also 66 points, then 2nd in 2020-21 with 74 points. Surely that was progress, right? Except the wheels came off hard in 2021-22, when United won just 4 of their first 13 games, and Ole was sacked in November 2021. Tactically, it was very much sitting deep in counter. When it worked, it really worked. When it didn't, it was brutal. Once he became permanent manager, his win rate actually dropped to 27%, which is somehow worse than his 28% win rate at Cardiff, where he got relegated. Transfers didn't help. United spent the most money post-Fergie. Jadon Sancho cost £73 million and managed 5 goals in 38 games under Ole. Harry Maguire cost £85 million and became captain. In total, Ole managed 168 games and had a 54% win rate, which on paper looks fine. After Ole, Michael Carrick stepped in as caretaker for a really short while. He managed 3 games, won 2, drew 1, and didn't lose. Then came Ralf Rangnick as interim manager. This was supposed to be the big tactical reset. High pressing, modern football, gegenpressing everywhere. In reality, rough. He recorded around a 38% win rate. In the league, United finished 6th with 58 points, their lowest ever Premier League total. Against the Big Six, it was just 1 win in 5 games, and defensively, it was a mess. United conceded 57 league goals, their worst tally since 1978-79. Players clearly didn't buy into what he was selling, and Rangnick himself summed it up best by saying the squad needed open-heart surgery, which kind of sums it all, and the club decided that they have seen enough of Rangnick. Next up was Erik ten Hag, arriving in the summer of 2022, and things looked better at some point. And unlike Ole, Ten Hag actually won things. The League Cup in 2023, beating Newcastle 2-0. Then the FA Cup in 2024, taking down Manchester City 2-1. The club had made real progress, at least for a while. League finishes under Ten Hag were all over the place. United were 3rd in 2022-23 with 75 points, which felt like a proper step forward. Then they went backwards to 8th in 2023-24 with 60 points, which was United's worst finish since Ferguson retired. Tactically, his insistence on building from the back caused serious problems. In 2023-24, United conceded 1.7 non-penalty expected goals per game, the 4th worst in the league. Away from home, it was grim. At one point, United went 12 straightaway games without a win against teams who finished in the top half of the previous season. Transfers were mixed at best. Antony cost £85 million, Rasmus Højlund cost £70 million, and both players are not playing for United at the moment. By 2024-25, things had gone south fast again, with just 4 wins in 9 games. Ten Hag was sacked. He managed 128 games and got over a 54% win rate. He was better than every other manager post-Fergie's except Jose Mourinho. Ruud van Nistelrooy came in next and had an ultra-brief interim spell for less than 2 weeks.
In 4 games, he had no losses, and he set the stage for the next manager. It was Ruben Amorim who entered the door next. United fans were excited after watching his exploits at Sporting CP and how he outclassed Pep Guardiola in a Champions League game. But perhaps Amorim was the clearest warning sign of all the managers who came after Ferguson, the one that really exposed how rotten and confused the role has become at Manchester United. He was the first official managerial appointment of the Ineos era, the first guy meant to represent a clean break, a fresh start, a new way of thinking. Instead, it was the same old problems all over again. Amorim officially started in November 2024, but the doubts were there long before he ever stood on the touchline. Not long after Sir Jim Ratcliffe took control of football operations in February 2024, he gathered his top executives and famously said that United's style of play will be determined in this room. That sentence alone raised eyebrows, because months later, when Ten Hag was sacked, Ratcliffe's chosen replacement was a manager with a very clear, very rigid philosophy. Amorim wasn't known for tweaking his ideas to fit a club. He was known for making the club fit him. People inside the club warned Ratcliffe at the time that this was a gamble. Amorim's success at Sporting was built on his 3-4-3 system, and reshaping United's bloated, unbalanced squad to suit it would cost millions the club simply didn't have. Still, the decision was made, and United doubled down on the idea that the system would somehow work itself out. 14 months later, it was over. Amorim was sacked after just 24 wins in 63 games, leaving with a win percentage of just below 32%, comfortably the worst of any permanent Manchester United manager since Sir Alex Ferguson retired in 2013. That stat alone tells you how badly things went, but the ending made it even messier. The announcement came less than 24 hours after Amorim's explosive press conference following a 1-1 draw with Leeds United. Sitting there, clearly fed up, he demanded to be viewed as the manager, not the coach, and told club executives to do your jobs, a comment widely interpreted as a shot at figures like Jason Wilcox. From the moment he publicly turned his frustration on his employers, it felt inevitable. Officially, club sources insisted the decision wasn't purely about a breakdown in relationships, but that there simply weren't enough signs of progress on the pitch. Amorim won just 15 of his 47 Premier League matches, and while that explanation makes sense on paper, the timing of the sacking, coming so soon after his rant at Ellen Road, was impossible to ignore. In the 2024-25 season, United finished 15th, scraping together 32 points from 21 games. That's not a team imposing itself. Tactically, Amorim barely budged. He used his 3-4-3 in 45 of his 47 league games, and the results were ugly. A -8 goal difference across his first 34 Premier League matches, and an average of 1.53 goals conceded per game, the worst defensive record per match in the club's history. And worst of all, they lost their only chance of European football when they lost in the Europa League final to Tottenham Hotspur. It wasn't just that they lost to Spurs, but Spurs were relatively worse than them, at least from the standings. So that is another manager gone. United have been spinning in circles ever since, and that constant turnover explains a lot. Since Ferguson walked away after winning the Premier League in 2012-13, United haven't sniffed another league title or a Champions League trophy. Sure, they've picked up a few cups along the way, 2 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, and a Europa League, but for a club of United's size, that's barely enough. Nice to have, but nowhere near the standard they once set. So it's another year and another manager hunt. Where does this leave the club? What manager would be willing to take the United job at the moment? And will a new manager even be the solution?